Hello everybody, in this video we're going to take an in-depth overview of the 2024 presidential general election. We're going to go through the candidates, the process, and the polling. I last did this in early January, so it's been 3 months. We've had a lot of developments, and there's going to be a lot of information here. We're going to go quickly, but all the links will be down below in the description. So this pretty much sums up the last few months. It looks like we got what everybody already predicted about a year ago. Unless something dramatic happens at the last second, it's going to be a Biden-Trump rematch. There's been a lot of polls that show a good chunk of Americans do not want either of these two. So whoever wins, it looks like not very many people are going to be excited. So let's dive into this and see what we've got. Now, the election is anticipated to only come down to about 6 to 7 states. Here's the forecast on those 7 battleground states. They are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We'll come back to some of the polling at the end, and there always could be an upset in a new battleground state that nobody saw coming. Some Republicans might be pushing for Minnesota, some Democrats might be pushing for Texas. It's still early, even though we're just getting into April. We've got a massive 7 months to go. So how did we get here? Well, we finally got into the primaries over the past few months, and we do technically have a bunch to go. But here, any competition that Joe Biden had pretty much never materialized. There's definitely commentary about how his opposition has not been treated fairly. Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, you might think they should have had legitimate debates, and some of these states only had Biden on the primary ballot. That to me seems fair enough. Some voters did vote uncommitted in the primary. Maybe that eventually means something, maybe it doesn't. On the other side, Donald Trump, it's kind of the same thing, but he did have a little bit more competition than Biden. After everybody dropped out, Nikki Haley emerged as the runner-up, but she didn't even get close in her home state. She did win Vermont, but that's only a small dent in Trump's overall dominance. Just like with allegations of corruption with the DNC, the RNC also has some of those allegations. Ronna McDaniel has stepped down, and it looks like overall Trump may have added more people loyal to his cause. Now, there is one more huge unknown with Trump, and that is going to be who he selects as his running mate. I just did a video on this last week. Take a look at it if you'd like. The frontrunners right now look like Tim Scott, Kristi Noem, Tulsi Gabbard, and Elise Stefanik. Now, the other major factor that's still largely unknown is going to be the third parties. This Wikipedia page outlines all those potential candidates. Now, the most high profile is clearly going to be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He also recently chose his running mate as Nicole Shanahan, so that's going to enable him to get on more ballots, but he still does have to go through a process. It's the same thing for these other candidates. We've got Cornel West. They do have a map here on the right column that shows their current ballot access. I'm not sure if that's completely current, but the other two major parties are going to be the Libertarians. Now, they still have to choose their nominee. Here's the page for their nominating process on Wikipedia. So there's a lot of candidates in the mix. We'll see who it ends up being, but the Libertarian Party overall does have the best third-party ballot access out of everybody. We've also got the Green Party, and it looks like Jill Stein is going to be the nominee. You might remember her name from back in 2016. She got some blame for Democrats from taking votes away from Hillary and thereby giving Trump the election. It's definitely going to be up for debate, but she's back at it again. The Green Party does not have phenomenal ballot access, but again, we've got to see what happens. Now, if you want a better way to track their ballot access, they do have their own ballot access trackers on their official websites. So here's Kennedy's, and you can click on any one of these states and see what the process is. For example, in Pennsylvania, he has to collect 5,000 signatures by August 1st. So there are different requirements for different states. Kennedy looks like he has the operation and the funding behind him to at least get a lot more ballot access. Now, you could also do the same thing for Cornel West. He also has a map on his official site, so you can click on these states, or you could scroll down and take a look at the overall table. So it's just too early to say exactly how much West is going to do. Finally, you could also do the same thing for the Green Party. You can get on here and take a look at where they're trying to get ballot access and where they've already got it. Usually with third parties, there's a lot of legal cases. In this particular election, it's not totally clear, but it looks like the third parties might be more of a threat to the Democrats. So if you ever look behind the scenes, you will find a lot of lawsuits where they're trying to do anything they can to stop them from gaining access. I think the Republicans would do the same thing if they were a threat to them. In certain states that might be true, but it looks like overall in this case, the Democrats are the more nefarious actors. Now, if you get back on Wikipedia, they do have an overall table with everybody's ballot access. It does get confusing, it can be hard to follow, and this data might not exactly be current, but this does give you just one place to look so you don't have to look across 4 or 5 different sites. Now, there's still one other aspect of third parties, and that is no labels. For a while, we've been hearing they're trying to gain ballot access, and they could recruit a top-tier candidate and be a threat to the two parties. It looks like that ultimately has not yet materialized. They haven't been able to get a top candidate, so we don't know if they're actually going to fizzle out or still try to do something. Democrats definitely were not a fan of this group, so no labels, something to still keep in mind, but ultimately, as of right now, they have just not not delivered the goods. Now, there are so many different factors to this general election between Biden and Trump and potentially Kennedy. But one ongoing thing to follow over the spring and summer is going to be Trump's legal issues. I know some of you want to see Trump go down, and a bunch of you think that it's all political. Either way, you might want a place to track what's going on. There's a bunch of different places you could do it. Here's a quick timeline on New York Times. You can see the background and when the trials are expected to start. Now, AP has something similar, but I think they have a better presentation. They have all the trials and the latest updates. This is something to take a look at if you have a hard time following what's happening. Who knows what's going to happen with this? A conviction would probably be a bad thing for Trump. If he gets acquitted, that would probably be a good thing. He's ultimately trying to delay the trials. Democrats want to do anything they can to speed him up and take him down. It's kind of a mess, but let's move on to campaign finance. So for that, we get on Ballotpedia. Now, this kind of data is always going to be changing and updated. There's always going to be fundraisers and donations. Trump has been hit with a lot of heavy fines. That is another factor that could be slowing down Trump's progress. So you can track this here and scroll down if you'd like. Right now, it looks like Biden does have an advantage. If you get on Reuters, they also have a recent article. Down here, here's a simple graph to compare Biden and Trump's fundraising. Now, I definitely don't think money is everything. Back in 2016, Hillary raised a ton of money, and ultimately, she didn't win it. You can't go into an election with no money, but when we're talking about many hundreds of millions of dollars, a lot of that is going to come down to strategy and tactics. Now, I'm not going to cover every single aspect like endorsements, but here are the upcoming presidential debates. The first one is September 16th in Texas. I think there should be debates. I hope both Trump and Biden, and maybe even Kennedy, if he meets the requirements, are on the stage. Hopefully the parameters and moderators are agreed upon and done fairly, but that should be a big deal later on in the summer. Now, another thing we've got coming up are the national conventions. The Republicans are first. Theirs is going to be in July in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's, of course, a key swing state. I'm sure that's going to be crazy stuff, but it might get even crazier the following month when the Democrats have their national convention in Chicago, Illinois. That's not going to be far from where the Republicans had theirs, and Illinois is not going to be a competitive state. However, Chicago is a massive blue city. Things could get out of hand. There could be unrest. There's likely to be protests and a divide between the progressives and the establishment. Either way, we're going to get a usual ton of speakers, and we got to see what each side puts out for their party platform. Now, what about the top issues for this upcoming election? Well, there's a lot of different data on different sites. Pew Research outlines some of them here. The economy is pretty much always going to be number one. This has defending against terrorism as number two. But generally, after the economy and inflation, immigration seems to have emerged as the number two issue. Now, most of the polling and data I've seen appears to favor Trump with the economy and immigration. Now, the sentiment about the economy might be improving a little bit. We've got to see what happens over the next couple of months. But usually there's nostalgia for the Trump years pre-COVID. Since Biden got in, inflation has been such a dominant issue. So we just don't know how long that sting is going to last. If it keeps going, that is definitely going to benefit Trump. Democrats' best issue is going to be abortion. We've got to see how Trump navigates that issue because it is a motivator for Democrats. Now, there's all kinds of other issues out there like crime, education, homelessness. Both Trump and Biden are going to benefit to varying degrees. The other thing is going to be foreign policy and whatever's going on overseas. Ukraine spending and funding for Israel against Hamas, plus China, these are all things that are going to matter. Biden is going to have to do something to reach out to progressives. He is in power. He easily could put out some executive orders to rally his base. There's no way he's just going to sit by and do nothing if he's trailing in the polls. Now let's move on to the national polling. Right now on Real Clear Politics, it's close. Trump is up by 1 point, 46.5 to 45.5. And if you look at the individual polls, they're all over the place. They range from Trump being up by 7 to Biden being up by 3. If you go down and look at the trends, Trump has generally consistently held a lead over the past several months. Over the past week or two, it might be narrowing up a little bit. We've got to see what happens. Now, the thing about the national popular vote is it does not determine who's going to win the election. That's going to come down to the Electoral College in the key battlegrounds. Last time Biden clearly won the popular vote, he got over 51% of the vote. That was about 4.5 points higher than Trump, and he barely won the Electoral College in the key states. So if Trump is ahead at all in the national popular vote, based on last time, it would look like that's a bad sign for Biden. I would think Biden should be ahead by at least 2 or 3 points. Now, if we take a look at a three-way race, there Trump is ahead by 5 points, but that Reuters poll is from back in January. So generally with Kennedy on the ballot, it's unclear if he is actually going to take more from Biden. So I've seen all kinds of smears against Kennedy. I've definitely seen support for him, but I've also seen a ton of things describing him only as an anti-vax conspiracy theorist. He was a Democrat up until not that long ago. To me, it seems like he clearly has more ties to the Democrats. A couple of issues are going to resonate with Republicans, so I've seen Democrats try to paint him as some kind of a secret Republican, but I've also seen Trump go after him, so Kennedy is kind of a wild card. Now, if you go out to a 5-way race, then Trump leads by an average of 2.4. Jill Stein and Cornel West pulling about 2%, while while Kennedy's at about 10. So the final thing we could do is get on PredictIt and see what the markets are showing. There, it's extremely close. Biden has narrowly regained the lead, but it's a pure toss-up. So what's the conclusion right now as of early April for the general election? Well, it looks like we're getting the rematch that nobody asked for. We all thought this was going to happen, but we heard there's different possibilities where maybe it doesn't happen. None of that panned out. It's Biden and Trump. Trump has legal issues. We don't know what's going to happen. You might think they're warranted. You might think it's all political. Biden has age issues. You might think those are completely exaggerated or not nearly being covered enough by the media. And then we've got the third parties. Kennedy is leading the way. It's very difficult for third parties to gain any traction. And it looks like Kennedy is serious about this. I think Biden is a little bit more scared of him than Trump, and that makes sense. He's still basically a Democrat with just a couple of views that don't fit neatly in the establishment box. So I don't think Kennedy's likely to win. I don't even think he's going to get really that close in any of the states. Of course, it's only April. We've got to see what happens. And as far as the polling goes, Trump has had a lead for several months. Each side hates to look at the polls unless they're on the top. Maybe people love the economy in 5 months. Or maybe these polls are just not capturing some of the electorate. Democrats are banking on abortion and the special election results that show that they've overperformed. But in the last 2 elections, the polling did underestimate Trump significantly in the Rust Belt. It's way too far to make any concrete conclusions. There could be an October surprise. Maybe Biden gets impeached. Maybe Trump has a heart attack. Trump does bring in huge crowds, but he's been tied up in the courts. And we got to see who he picks as his running mate. That could be a game changer. Plus, there's going to be all the usual issues with ballots and voter ID and absentee, plus mass mailing ballots, signature verifications, ballot harvesting, how long it's going to actually take to count the votes. Unless it's a gigantic landslide, whoever loses is not really going to accept the results. It's either going to be voter suppression or voter fraud, Russian interference or interference from big tech. It's going to be a total mess. For me, the biggest question might be what's going to be the biggest motivator, the people that come out purely to vote against Trump or the people that purely come out to vote for him. We are going to try to follow it, but for now, I'm going to leave it there. So let me know in the comments. Did I get everything covered? What are your thoughts about the candidates, the issues, the process? Let me know your thoughts down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.